Morning everybody, and today we are talking about Wind and Truth chapters 1 and 2. So as previously explained, I am doing the read-along for Wind and Truth, the fifth book in the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. The disclaimers for this series are that I'm of course going to be spoiling what is happening in these chapters of Wind and Truth. I'm also going to be potentially giving spoilers for what came before within the Stormlight Archive and for what came before within the entire Cosmere. Now, final disclaimer, I am not the sort of like person who has like all of the knowledge about the Cosmere and who takes in every single detail. I'm the person who forgets every single thing all of the time. So I'm not gonna be here with like 20,000 like theories about the way that this or small element in that book connects to this thing in this chapters. That's not me. I'm just gonna give you guys my general opinion and sort of thoughts throughout reading Wind and Truth. So yesterday I read chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 1 is from the perspective of Kaladin and Shallan, and chapter 2 is only from the perspective of Kaladin. And these are very much just sort of like setup chapters, so there's not really that much to go through with them, so it will be a relatively short video, I feel like. So in the Shallan perspective, we are basically back to lasting integrity in Shadesmar. We basically have a meeting between Shallan and then Pattern and Testament, who's her second spren that we found out about at the end of book 4. Now, it kind of explains that the Herald Collect has told Pattern apparently that there is still a bond between Shallan and her old spren, and that the reason for that is kind of that the breaking of the bond wasn't like a clean cut the way it was with during the Recreance with all of these Radiants and their spren that resulted in the spren being Dead Eyes. It's a little bit more of a unclean cut, a jarring of the bond rather than a complete break and snap of the bond. And I think that to some extent makes sense, you know, like when there is a relationship and there's a break within a relationship, there are also clean cuts and there are like more messy situations. And I think the situation with Shallan definitely is a little bit of a messy deal, with Shallan having been a young child who lashed out towards her spren out of an inability to deal with the emotions in the moment. And it is different than if she were to have, I don't know, broken the bond in the sense of doing acts that are not in keeping with her oaths, and thus breaking the bond and having the spren on their end also breaking their connection. Whereas in this case, the spren on her end still loves Shallan, still was supportive of Shallan. It was Shallan who was rejecting all of this entire bond because of what happened to her and her mother. So I think that makes sense. I don't know whether this sort of like small chapter really set up what Shallan is going to be doing in this book. It did mention that she was going to try and kind of heal the bond with testaments, but I don't know whether that's like the main focus of what her storyline is going to be or not. If not, then nothing has really been set up for Shallan yet. But for me personally, I think, like, first of all, the idea of her having two spren is interesting because nobody really knows what the implications are. They are two of the same spren. I think if they were two different spren, it would be interesting to see if that would have like implications of what power she would have access to, if she would have access to more different types of powers if she were bonded to two different types of spren. However, they're two of the same spren. Does that mean that she will have like more power if she bonds to both of them, or like what are the interactions that are possible there because of the existence of two spren? And it kind of reinforces my wish for this book, my wish for the champion. So we know that Dalinar wants to be his own champion. Dalinar has said so in the past. I have always found that doesn't, like, I guess it makes sense, but because I don't like Dalinar, I don't really want Dalinar to be the one. But I also feel like it doesn't really make sense because Dalinar has been stepping back into more of this sort of like leadership role. And while there is something to be said for a storyline in which he would like take the front lines again and like beat that Dalinar again, that Dalinar is a Dalinar that we've been moving away from. That Dalinar has been shown to not really have been such a healthy Dalinar. And so I feel like it doesn't really make sense for Dalinar to be the one. And especially since that's what we've been told, right? We've been told that Dalinar will be the champion. And so I feel like that isn't going to happen. That Dalinar is definitely not going to be the one who will be the champion at the end of this book. And I personally think it's going to be Shallan. I think Shallan, there's a lot to be said for Shallan being the champion, and mainly that is the element of surprise. Shallan is unpredictable. And so Odium, I think, can really predict whatever Dalinar will do in any situation. And so within a fight sequence, Odium versus Dalinar Odium has the advantage there of being able to read Dalinar. Whereas Odium versus Shallan and all of her 20,000 personalities would be an interesting fight. And especially if she now has 2 Spren, that can potentially give her a little bit of an extra edge as well. So that is my wish. I hope Shallan will be the champion at the end of the book. But as Rhythm of War has shown, what I wish for doesn't always come true. So we will see whether that ends up happening. So that's really all we got in Shallan's perspective. And then in Kaladin's perspectives, we basically see him kind of dealing with the emotions that were unlocked during Rhythm of War. He is in a good place in this sequence. He is definitely having a good day, but he's also reflecting on how he needs to take in these good days and remind himself of the existence of these types of days on days when things aren't going as well. And we have a scene in which he is being talked to by what we can presume to be the Stormfather. The Stormfather telling him that he has more in store from Kaladin and that he needs to ask for more from Kaladin. And then kind of telling him that he needs to listen to the bondsmith and follow their instructions. Now Kaladin has been talking to Dalinar. Dalinar has given him the sort of assignment to go to Shinovar to try and heal a crazy herald over there. But is Dalinar the bondsmith that we are referring to here? I don't know. I find it cryptically phrased, and because we already knew that was going to be like, because this assignment and this conversation with Dalinar, it already happened at the end of Rhythm of War, so it feels weird that it's reintroduced here now. I assume it's there as a sort of like exposition, a way to reintroduce this storyline, but it felt a little bit clunky, I gotta say. It felt a little bit like, we have to listen to the bondsmith, and then he remembers his conversation with Dalinar, and I'm like, but is that then the bondsmith that the Stormfather refers to? Because Navani is as well as a bondsmith, right? Because she bonded to the siblings. So like the way that is phrased, the way that scene played out just felt a little bit clunky and clumsy to me. But I assume it was really just an attempt at reintroducing that conversation with Dalinar at the end of Rhythm of War. So I'm really looking forward to that. Like, Kaladin and Zets are some of my favorite characters, and getting them together on a road trip, yes. The only thing that I'm like, 9 days? Like, I don't know how far Shinovar is, and of course both of them are, like, both of them have the power to, what do you call that? Wind run? I don't know whether you call it like that, but so I guess they can get there within a reasonable amount of time and still do that whole sort of psychiatry thing, but still 9 days isn't a lot of time, right? Because I'm assuming that they basically have the deadline of getting this all done prior to the standoff between Odium and the champion. But yeah, I mean, let's not think too much about the logistics of those 9 days, I guess. But so yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Aside from that, there's not really that much in this chapter. There's some sort of like logistics between Kaladin and Syl of like setting up a system where Cal will know whether Syl is visible to others or not. A cute scene with his little brother, and then just like some information about like the tower and the way that the bond between Navani and the sibling has kind of changed life within the tower, and that there's more sort of like technology now. It seems to be like a whole demotica. Is that how you say it in English as well? Like domotics maybe? I don't know. The sort of like thing where you have like functions within the house that you can steer from central steering mechanism. And so Navani's bond with the sibling basically making it possible for people, for example, to get warm water just by like touching stones in the wall and kind of thinking that they want warm water and stuff like that. So I guess that's cool, but like I'm still bitter over Navani bonding the sibling, whereas I wanted David to be the one. Like, justice to David, still. He should have been the one bonding the sibling. It was set up, and I read so much into that. It was like, oh yeah, he's really going there. Yes, this is going to be like David's moment. He's going to bond this tower spren, and then it's like, what? He went for Navani? Okay, fine. So yeah. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about these 2 chapters, because there's really not that much, as I said, in them. So yeah, let's check in next week for the next 2 chapters, which I'm fearing is going to be Dalinar chapters. But yeah, we have to have them at some point throughout this book, I'm sure. But so yeah, see you guys for the next one. Let me know if you've read chapter 1 and 2, what your thoughts were about it, and whether you have any theories or any wishes for who the champion should be.